Every pain brings a light. Buddhist teachings to find harmony. Life is filled with contrasts that often seem impossible to reconcile. Joy and sorrow, birth and death, gain and loss, love and heartbreak. These pairs of opposites define human experience and give it depth. Yet when pain comes, most of us feel tempted to resist, to flee, or to ask why such suffering has appeared in our path. From the Buddhist perspective, pain is not a meaningless obstacle, but a teacher, a lantern in the darkness, a gate through which we pass to discover wisdom, compassion, and harmony. The title of this reflection, "Every Pain Brings a Light," is rooted in this understanding, that suffering is not an end but a beginning, not a punishment but an invitation, not a senseless accident but a key to awakening. Buddhist wisdom does not deny the difficulty of pain. The Buddha himself, after leaving his palace and walking among the sick, the old and the dying, recognized that life is inevitably marked by suffering. This recognition became the foundation of his teaching, the first noble truth, the reality of dukkha, which refers to the unsatisfactory, painful, and unstable nature of worldly existence. But he did not stop there. He taught the cause of suffering, the possibility of liberation, and the path that leads to freedom. Within this framework, every experience of pain can be transformed into a source of insight, a step toward balance, and a reminder of the impermanence that liberates us from attachment. The theme of this text is not merely to restate Buddhist doctrines, but to dive deeply into how pain itself, when understood correctly, can become the very spark of illumination. Pain is a teacher that strips us of illusions. It opens us to compassion for others. It humbles the ego. It shows us the fragility of life, and it reminds us of the deeper truths hidden beneath surface appearances. Pain has the power to purify, to redirect, and to awaken. To find harmony through pain is to realize that nothing is wasted, that even in suffering there is meaning, and that light always emerges where darkness seems overwhelming. In the following 5 topics, we will journey together through Buddhist teachings that reveal how pain brings light. Each topic will explore different aspects of this profound truth: the nature of suffering as a teacher, the transformation of pain into compassion, the role of impermanence in freeing us from despair, the discipline of mindfulness as a way to embrace suffering, and the final discovery that pain itself can be a gateway to liberation and harmony. Let us begin this path with the first insight: pain as a teacher that strips illusions and awakens the seeker. Pain, as the teacher of impermanence and awakening pain, is often experienced as an unwelcome guest, something we resist at all costs. Yet, in Buddhist teachings, pain is one of the most powerful teachers because it breaks through the illusions that comfort us, but ultimately enslave us. In daily life, we tend to assume that things will last, that relationships will remain unchanged, that health will be stable, that comfort will be permanent. But when sickness strikes, when a loved one departs, when failure knocks at the door, pain crashes through those assumptions and forces us to confront impermanence. Impermanence, anicca, is one of the core insights in Buddhism. Everything that arises will pass away. Every joy fades, every sorrow transforms, every moment dissolves into the next. Without pain, we might continue living in the illusion of permanence. Pleasure deceives us into thinking it will last forever. Success tricks us into believing it is stable. Pain, however, awakens us. It reveals that clinging to what changes is futile, that attachment to passing forms leads only to frustration. Pain teaches us that life cannot be grasped, that control is an illusion, and that liberation comes not from holding on, but from letting go. Consider the story of Kisa Gotami, a woman from the Buddha's time who lost her only child. Overwhelmed by grief, she carried the lifeless body of her son to the Buddha, begging him to bring the boy back to life. The Buddha did not lecture her with abstract philosophy. Instead, he told her to bring him a mustard seed from any household in the village where no one had ever lost a loved one. Kisa Gotami went door to door, but in every house she visited, death had touched someone, a father, a mother, a sister, a friend. She returned empty-handed but transformed. Through her pain, she realized that death is universal and that suffering is shared by all beings. The light of wisdom entered her heart because her grief had taught her impermanence. Pain therefore becomes a mirror. It shows us where we are attached, where we refuse to accept reality as it is. When pain comes, we often say, "This should not be happening to me." But the Buddhist path asks us to see pain as precisely what we need to wake up. Pain exposes the fragility of the self we try to protect. It undermines the arrogance of believing we are immune to loss. It strips away the false comfort of permanence. In doing so, it guides us toward awakening. The awakening that pain brings is not purely intellectual. It is visceral, embodied, and deeply human. A person who has faced illness understands the value of health in a way that words cannot teach. One who has known heartbreak understands the preciousness of love. One who has walked through loneliness understands the sacredness of true connection. Pain engraves its lessons on the heart, shaping us into beings capable of depth, humility, and compassion. In meditation, Buddhist practitioners are often instructed not to run away from discomfort, but to observe it with awareness. When pain arises in the body, a sore knee, a stiff back, a restless mind, the natural impulse is to shift position or escape. But the practice asks us to sit with it, to breathe into it, to watch how it changes, to see its impermanence. In that stillness, a subtle light emerges, the realization that pain, like everything else, arises and passes away. By observing pain without fear, one learns the secret that nothing holds ultimate power over us, not even suffering. Thus, pain becomes the teacher of freedom. It loosens the chains of illusion and reveals the truth that harmony is not found by avoiding pain, but by embracing it as part of life's flow. Pain instructs us in patience, in courage, in surrender. It is the fire that burns away ignorance. Without pain, we would remain asleep in the dream of permanence. With pain, we awaken to the reality of change. And in that awakening, light shines. At this point, it is important to remind the seeker that these teachings are not merely abstract or distant. They apply to your own life, to your own pain, to the struggles you carry silently. Perhaps you have known the loss of someone you love, or the burden of illness, or the disappointment of dreams that failed. If so, remember that within those very experiences lies the seed of awakening. Your pain is your teacher. Listen to it. Let it guide you to the light that cannot be taken away. And as you continue this journey of wisdom, I invite you to stay connected to this path of reflection and growth. Subscribe to the channel so that each lesson, each insight, and each story can accompany you as you discover the harmony hidden in life's trials. The transformation of pain into compassion and connection. Pain, in its rawest form, often isolates us. When we are wounded, whether physically, emotionally, or spiritually, there is a natural tendency to retreat inward, to curl up around the ache and protect ourselves. Yet paradoxically, Buddhism teaches that when we allow ourselves to meet pain fully, without denial and without hardening, something miraculous can happen. Pain becomes the birthplace of compassion. From the dark soil of suffering arises the flower of empathy, the capacity to see our struggles reflected in the lives of others, and the ability to extend genuine kindness. This transformation of pain into compassion is one of the most profound ways in which light emerges from the shadows of suffering. The Buddha himself embodied this transformation. After his enlightenment beneath the Bodhi tree, he could have remained in blissful solitude, detached from the pains of the world. But instead, he chose to walk among people, to listen to their suffering, to teach them the path of liberation. His compassion was not an abstract principle, but a direct response to the reality of pain he had seen and experienced. The illnesses, the losses, the disappointments, all that he witnessed and endured became fuel for a compassion so vast that it embraced all beings. To understand this transformation more deeply, we must look at how pain humbles us. When life is smooth, when everything goes according to plan, we often feel self-sufficient, even superior. It is easy to overlook the struggles of others when we are comfortable. But when pain strikes, when our health fails, when betrayal pierces us, or when loneliness suffocates, we are stripped of illusions of control and superiority. We see our vulnerability, our dependence, our shared humanity. This realization is often bitter, but it can also be tender. For when I recognize my fragility, I also recognize yours. When I feel the weight of grief, I can no longer dismiss yours. Pain becomes the bridge between self and other, the silent thread that binds us in compassion. The Buddhist practice of karuna, or compassion, is not simply pity. It is the willingness to be with suffering, our own and others, without turning away. When we encounter pain, we are given the choice to close our hearts in bitterness or to open them in compassion. If we close them, pain hardens into resentment and isolation. If we open them, pain softens into empathy and love. The alchemy of compassion is not automatic, but it is always possible. Every wound carries within it the potential to make us more tender rather than more cruel, more connected rather than more distant. One of the great tools for this transformation in Buddhism is the practice of Tonglen, a meditation that comes from Tibetan tradition. In Tonglen, one breathes in the suffering of others and breathes out relief, kindness, and love. At first, this may seem overwhelming. Why take in more suffering when we already carry so much? But in practice, Tonglen reverses the instinct of self-protection that isolates us. It teaches us to embrace pain as part of the human condition, to stop resisting it, and to let it open our hearts. When you breathe in the suffering of a friend who is ill or of a stranger who has lost their home, you recognize that their pain is not separate from yours. When you breathe out compassion, you discover that your own heart expands beyond its small boundaries. Pain becomes not a prison, but a door. Imagine, for example, a person who has suffered deep betrayal. The first instinct may be to close off, to distrust everyone, to live in bitterness. But with awareness, that same person can reflect, because I know what betrayal feels like, I understand how devastating it is. I would never wish it on another. From that reflection grows compassion, a genuine desire to live with honesty and kindness and to support others who are hurting. Pain does not vanish, but it transforms. Its sharp edges are softened by empathy. Its weight becomes lighter when shared. Compassion born of pain is also what allows communities to survive and thrive. When disasters strike, earthquakes, floods, wars, we often see ordinary people rising to extraordinary acts of kindness. Neighbors shelter neighbors, strangers feed strangers, people risk their lives to save those they have never met. These gestures are not born out of comfort, but out of suffering. Pain awakens solidarity. It breaks down the walls of selfishness. It reminds us that no one escapes suffering, and therefore everyone deserves compassion. In Buddhism, the bodhisattva ideal beautifully captures this spirit. A bodhisattva is one who vows not to enter final liberation until all beings are freed from suffering. This vow springs from compassion, from the deep recognition that my suffering is not separate from yours. The bodhisattva looks at the world's pain not with despair, but with boundless love. And this love is possible because the bodhisattva has not fled from pain, but embraced it. Each wound becomes fuel for deeper empathy, each sorrow a reminder of the need for compassion. On a personal level, we can observe this transformation in daily life. Think of someone who has survived a serious illness. Often, such people emerge with a new sensitivity to the struggles of others. A nurse who once lay helpless in a hospital bed tends to her patients with greater understanding. A counselor who once battled depression listens with more patience. Their pain did not destroy them, it deepened them. It made them capable of love that is not superficial but rooted in lived experience. This transformation is not only emotional but also spiritual. In Buddhist cosmology, compassion is seen as the antidote to the poison of selfishness. Pain teaches us the futility of clinging to self-centered desires because suffering is always intensified when the ego insists on me and mine. But when we see that all beings suffer and when we extend compassion, the boundaries of self begin to dissolve. In that dissolution, harmony arises. The self no longer fights against the world, but flows with it. Compassion unites, heals, and restores balance. Yet it is crucial to emphasize that this transformation requires courage. Pain does not automatically produce compassion. It can just as easily produce bitterness, anger, or hatred. The difference lies in how we meet pain. If we resist it, blame others, or wall ourselves off, we harden. But if we turn toward it, breathe with it, and allow it to soften us, we open. Buddhism provides the tools for this turning: mindfulness to observe pain without being consumed, meditation to expand awareness beyond the narrow self, ethical conduct to prevent harm, and wisdom to see that suffering is universal. These practices ensure that pain becomes a seed of compassion rather than a source of division. Ultimately, the transformation of pain into compassion reveals a paradox. Our deepest wounds can become our deepest sources of light. The scarred heart can become the most open. The grieving soul can become the most tender. The one who has suffered greatly can become the one who uplifts others. This is not sentimentality, but lived truth, confirmed again and again in the lives of those who have turned their pain into service, their suffering into solidarity, their wounds into wisdom. And so, as you reflect on your own life, ask yourself, how has pain shaped your heart? Can you see in your wounds the possibility of compassion? Can you let your suffering become a bridge to others rather than a wall? This is the invitation of Buddhist wisdom: to let pain be transformed, to let it guide you into compassion that heals not only yourself but the world. Every time you choose kindness in the face of your own suffering, you bring light into darkness. Every time you extend empathy to another's pain, you embody harmony. As we continue this journey together, I encourage you not only to reflect, but to remain connected to these teachings and stories. Subscribe to the channel, so that with each lesson you can be reminded of the light hidden in your pain and of the compassion that makes life meaningful. The liberation found in impermanence. When we speak of pain as a teacher and compassion as its flower, we come inevitably to one of the deepest roots of Buddhist wisdom, the truth of impermanence. Every moment of suffering is intertwined with this truth, for it is the very impermanence of life that causes us to feel the sting of loss, the ache of change, the sorrow of endings. Yet in Buddhism, impermanence is not merely a source of pain, but also the very key to liberation. Pain brings us face to face with the reality that nothing endures, and in that confrontation lies the chance to be free. To embrace impermanence is to discover that no pain lasts forever, that no grief is eternal, and that within the flowing river of change there is a hidden harmony that sets the heart at peace. We live most of our lives as if permanence were real. We cling to relationships, believing they will never alter. We build careers as if they will stand unchanged. We admire our youthful strength as if it will not fade. But then reality intrudes. A loved one dies, a job is lost, a body grows frail. Pain cuts through the illusion, and it hurts precisely because we wanted permanence where only change exists. The Buddha pointed this out with clarity. Suffering arises from clinging to what is impermanent. When we attach ourselves to what cannot last, we condemn ourselves to sorrow. But when we see impermanence clearly, when we embrace it rather than fight it, a new light dawns. The teaching of impermanence, anicca, is not meant to depress, but to liberate. Think for a moment of your greatest grief. Perhaps you lost someone you loved dearly. At first the pain seemed unbearable, endless, overwhelming, but time revealed something. The sharpness softened, the wound began to close, and though sorrow remained, it no longer crushed you as it once did. That is impermanence at work. Pain itself passes. The Buddha often reminded his disciples that no storm, however fierce, lasts forever. Clouds dissolve, rain ceases, night gives way to dawn. So too with suffering. To see this truth deeply is to carry hope even in despair, light even in darkness. The recognition of impermanence also brings a profound gratitude for the present. When we accept that all things pass, we stop taking them for granted. The smile of a friend, the warmth of sunlight, the breath in our lungs, these become treasures precisely because they are fleeting. Pain teaches this with brutal clarity. When something is lost, we realize its preciousness. But Buddhism invites us not to wait until loss to awaken gratitude. By remembering impermanence each day, we cherish what is here now. Instead of clinging in fear, we embrace in love. Instead of ignoring the ordinary, we honor it as sacred. Impermanence thus transforms pain into appreciation, sorrow into presence, and loss into wisdom. This is why Buddhist teachers often urge meditation on death, not as morbid obsession but as liberation. By contemplating that all things end, we learn to release our desperate grasping. We see that life's beauty lies in its fragility, its fleetingness. Like a blossom that opens and falls in a single day, life is radiant precisely because it does not last. Pain, when it comes, drives this lesson deeper than words ever could. It forces us to see that clinging is futile, but love, gratitude, and presence are always possible. Impermanence also frees us from the prison of identity. We often suffer because we cling not only to people or possessions, but also to the self we imagine ourselves to be. I am strong, we tell ourselves, until illness comes. I am successful, until failure arrives. I am young, until age betrays us. Pain shatters these identities, and at first we feel lost. But in truth, this loss is freedom. The self we cling to is no more permanent than a cloud in the sky. To realize impermanence is to realize that we are not fixed beings, but flowing processes. We are breath, thought, sensation, arising and passing in every moment. Pain reminds us of this fluidity. It strips away the masks and points to the truth. There is no solid self to protect, only a stream of experiences to observe. And in that observation, peace dawns. Consider also how impermanence heals resentment. If someone hurts us, we cling to anger, believing it defines them forever. Yet with time, we see that they change, that circumstances shift, that what once was unbearable now softens. When we recognize impermanence, we release grudges, because we know nothing stays the same. Not our enemies, not ourselves, not even our pain. This release is not weakness, but strength, for it unburdens the heart. Pain teaches us this when we finally see that clinging to anger hurts us more than anyone else. Impermanence, once embraced, becomes the great healer. In Buddhist practice, mindfulness is the tool by which we encounter impermanence directly. When we sit in meditation, we watch the breath arise and fall, sensations appear and fade, thoughts come and go. We see impermanence not as theory, but as reality, moment by moment. Pain in meditation is especially instructive. A cramp in the leg, a burning in the back. If we resist, it grows unbearable. But if we observe, we notice it shifts. What seemed solid dissolves. What seemed permanent transforms. Pain becomes the teacher of impermanence, and impermanence becomes the door to liberation. Harmony arises when we stop fighting the flow of change. Imagine being carried down a river. If you resist, thrash, and cling to the banks, you exhaust yourself and suffer. But if you surrender, if you float, the river carries you effortlessly. Life is this river. Pain is the reminder that clinging to the shore is futile. Impermanence invites us to let go, to trust the current, to find peace in the flow. This letting go does not mean indifference. It means love without attachment, engagement without fear, presence without clinging. To truly see impermanence is to live without fear. Fear is always rooted in the illusion of permanence. Fear of losing what we cling to, fear of change, fear of death. But when we see that everything is changing always, fear dissolves. Death itself is no longer terrifying, for it is simply part of the flow, the continuation of impermanence. The Buddha said, "Of all footprints, the elephant's is supreme. Of all contemplations, the contemplation of impermanence is supreme." Pain guides us to this supreme contemplation. It reveals the truth we resist, and in that revelation, it frees us. And so, as you look at your own life, reflect on how impermanence has already worked as a healer. Think of a sorrow that once consumed you, but now has softened. Think of a fear that time has dissolved. See how every joy, every grief, every breath has passed, and yet you remain here, alive, awake, capable of love. Impermanence does not rob life of meaning, it gives life meaning. Without impermanence, nothing would matter. With it, everything is precious. Pain is the reminder of this truth, the teacher that forces us to see. Every tear carries within it the light of impermanence, and every wound whispers the secret of freedom. In this way, the Buddhist path invites you to hold impermanence not with dread but with reverence. To see it not as an enemy but as a friend, not as a curse but as a gift. Pain will come, but it will also pass. Sorrow will strike, but it too will fade. And in their passing they leave behind wisdom, compassion and peace. This is the liberation found in impermanence, the light that shines when we accept change as the very essence of existence. And as you continue to walk this path of wisdom, remember that these reflections are not meant to be taken once and forgotten. They are seeds to be watered, truths to be lived, to stay connected to this journey, to keep receiving reminders of the light hidden in impermanence. Subscribe to the channel. Let us continue together to explore the harmony that arises when pain is embraced, when change is accepted, and when life is lived in the flow of impermanence. Mindfulness is the path to embracing pain. When we arrive at the reality of suffering, the awakening to compassion, and the revelation of impermanence, we might still ask, how do we actually live with pain? How do we meet it in the moment, when the mind is restless, when the heart is heavy, when the body cries out? It is here that the practice of mindfulness becomes central in the Buddhist path. Mindfulness is the art of staying present with whatever arises, without clinging, without aversion, without denial. It is the lamp we hold as we walk through the darkness of suffering, allowing us to see clearly rather than stumble blindly. Pain, when met with mindfulness, ceases to be an enemy and becomes a teacher, a companion, and even a doorway to deeper harmony. The Buddha often compared the untrained mind to a monkey, leaping from branch to branch, restless, distracted, grasping one thing and then another. When pain strikes, this monkey mind magnifies suffering. A small discomfort becomes unbearable. A single sorrow becomes a story of endless despair. A fleeting thought becomes an identity. Mindfulness interrupts this cycle. It invites us to pause, to breathe, to observe. Instead of being swept away by the storm, we sit at its center. We notice the sensations in the body, the emotions in the heart, the thoughts in the mind. We acknowledge them without judgment. This is pain, this is sorrow, this is fear. And in the very act of acknowledging, something shifts. The pain is still there, but it no longer owns us. Buddhism distinguishes between pain and suffering. Pain is the inevitable reality of life. The body grows old, illness comes, loss is unavoidable. But suffering, the mental anguish we pile on top of pain, arises from resistance, clinging, and aversion. It is like being struck by two arrows. The first arrow is pain, unavoidable. The second arrow is our reaction, Why me? This will never end. I cannot bear it. The practice of mindfulness teaches us to meet the first arrow with awareness and compassion, without shooting ourselves with the second. In this way, mindfulness does not eliminate pain, but transforms suffering. Consider the simple example of physical discomfort. In meditation, a pain in the knee arises. The unmindful mind says, "This is terrible. I cannot sit any longer. I must escape." Anxiety grows, restlessness builds, and the pain multiplies. But with mindfulness, we breathe into it, observing, this is a sensation of pressure, of heat, of tightness. It is not permanent. It arises, it changes, it may fade. Instead of fighting, we watch. Often the sensation itself becomes less overwhelming, and even if it remains, our relationship to it has changed. We are no longer victims, but witnesses. The same principle applies to emotional pain. A wave of grief arises. Unmindfully, we drown in stories of despair. Mindfully, we sit with the raw ache, noticing how it expands and contracts, how it pulses like a tide, how even grief itself is impermanent. This practice requires courage, because mindfulness asks us not to escape, but to turn toward pain. The instinct of the mind is always to run, to numb with distractions, to deny with illusions, to suppress with force. But Buddhism teaches that what we resist persists. The more we flee pain, the more power it gains over us. By turning toward it with mindfulness, we rob it of its tyranny. Pain becomes bearable, even illuminating, when we shine the light of awareness upon it. Like a monster in the shadows that shrinks when seen in the open, suffering diminishes when we face it with presence. In daily life, mindfulness means carrying this awareness beyond the meditation cushion. When someone insults us, the immediate reaction might be anger, defensiveness, retaliation. Unmindfully, we add fuel to the fire. Mindfully, we notice, here is anger arising. My heart is racing. My mind is constructing a story of attack. We breathe, we pause, and in that pause, freedom arises. We may still feel the sting, but we are no longer controlled by it. This freedom is the essence of harmony. Pain still visits us, but it no longer dictates our response. Mindfulness also deepens compassion. When we observe our own suffering with kindness, we become more capable of extending the same kindness to others. We see that everyone is struck by arrows, that everyone carries burdens unseen. Mindfulness expands the heart's capacity to hold pain without collapsing, to remain steady amidst storms. It teaches us to listen more deeply, to respond with patience, to offer presence rather than solutions. Sometimes the most compassionate act is simply to sit with someone in silence, to be fully present with their pain without trying to fix it. Mindfulness trains us for this presence, which is itself a gift of healing. The practice of mindfulness is not passive resignation, but active engagement with reality. By seeing clearly, we act wisely. For example, if we are mindful of stress in our bodies, we learn when to rest, when to nourish ourselves, when to speak truthfully about our needs. If we are mindful of destructive habits, we recognize them before they entangle us further. Pain becomes a signal rather than an enemy, guiding us toward balance. Without mindfulness, pain merely hurts. With mindfulness, pain instructs. The light of mindfulness shines most brightly when we encounter life's great sorrows, death, separation, failure. In such moments, the unmindful mind panics, collapses, and despairs. But the mindful mind breathes, observes, and accepts. It does not deny grief, but allows it to flow. It does not resist loss, but honors it. In doing so, it discovers the quiet truth that even in the midst of sorrow, peace is possible. This peace does not erase pain, but holds it gently, like a parent holding a crying child. The pain cries out, but the embrace of mindfulness soothes it, reminds it that it is not alone, and allows it to soften. Many Buddhist teachers describe mindfulness as a lamp in the darkness. Without it, we stumble blindly, fearing every shadow. With it, we see clearly. Shadows are only shapes. Fear is only imagination. Pain is only sensation. This clarity transforms life. When pain arises, instead of being overwhelmed, we say, "Ah, here you are. You are part of life. You will stay for a time, and then you will pass." In this way, mindfulness brings dignity to suffering, courage to fear, and harmony to the chaos of change. And so mindfulness is the path by which we embrace pain without being destroyed by it. It is the practice that transforms suffering into wisdom, despair into presence, pain into light. It teaches us to live not by fleeing discomfort, but by embracing life in its fullness, both joy and sorrow, both pleasure and pain. This embrace is the secret of harmony. For when we are fully present, we discover that beneath the surface of pain, there is a deeper stillness, a spaciousness that cannot be shaken. That stillness is the ground of peace, the essence of enlightenment, the light that shines through every wound. As you reflect on this, consider how mindfulness might change your relationship with your own pain. Instead of asking, "How can I get rid of this?" ask, "What is this pain teaching me?" Instead of fleeing, breathe. Instead of judging, observe. In this shift, suffering softens and harmony begins to unfold. And as you walk this path of mindfulness, remember that practice requires reminders, encouragement, and community. To continue receiving teachings and reflections that strengthen your heart, I invite you to subscribe to the channel. Each step of mindfulness you take will guide you closer to harmony, and together we will continue to discover the light hidden in pain. Pain as the gateway to liberation and harmony. When we have walked through the teachings of pain as a teacher, compassion as its transformation, impermanence as its liberation, and mindfulness as its embrace, we arrive at the most profound realization of all. Pain itself, when understood deeply, can become the very gateway to liberation and harmony. In Buddhism, liberation is not found by avoiding or erasing suffering, but by walking directly through it, seeing its nature clearly, and allowing it to dissolve the illusions that bind us. Pain, then, is not an accident or a meaningless burden, but the very doorway to awakening. In this way, every wound, every loss, every sorrow holds within it the seed of enlightenment. The Buddha's path begins with the first noble truth, the truth of suffering. Unlike many spiritual traditions that may begin with promises of bliss, Buddhism begins with honesty. Life is marked by dukkha, which means not only obvious pain, but also dissatisfaction, unease, the subtle sense that nothing quite fulfills us. This recognition is not pessimistic, it is realistic. Only by facing suffering can we be free from it. Pain is the entry point to wisdom because it reveals the problem clearly. Without seeing suffering, we would never seek liberation. Without knowing darkness, we would never yearn for light. The second noble truth reveals the cause of suffering, craving, clinging, attachment to what changes. Pain hurts most when we refuse to accept it, when we demand that life conform to our desires. We cling to pleasure and resist loss, but change is inevitable. Here, pain once again is our teacher. It shows us where we are attached, where we cling, where we resist reality. Every time pain breaks our illusions, it points us back to the root of suffering. To see this clearly is already a step toward freedom. The third noble truth declares that liberation is possible. Suffering can cease. Pain itself may not vanish, but our relationship to it can change completely. When craving and clinging dissolve, suffering dissolves. Imagine a burning coal held tightly in the hand. It burns because we grasp it. The coal itself is pain, but the suffering comes from our refusal to let go. If we release, the burning stops. Liberation is the letting go, the release of the grasping that makes pain unbearable. This is why Buddhism insists that even in the heart of suffering, freedom is possible. Pain can become the gateway because it shows us the coal we are grasping and teaches us the wisdom of release. The fourth noble truth gives the path, the noble eightfold path: right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration. This path is not a list of rules, but a guide to living in harmony with reality. And it is in walking this path that we discover pain as a companion rather than an enemy. Right view helps us see pain as impermanent. Right intention teaches us compassion. Right effort shows us how to face difficulties with balance. Right mindfulness allows us to observe suffering without being overwhelmed. Right concentration gives us the stillness to hold pain without fear. Step by step, the path transforms every sorrow into wisdom, every wound into light. When pain is seen in this way, harmony arises naturally. Harmony does not mean a life without difficulties. It means a life lived in alignment with reality, a heart at peace, even in the midst of storms. Pain once resisted becomes accepted. Sorrow once dreaded becomes understood. Change once feared becomes embraced. This is liberation, not the escape from pain, but the freedom to meet it without chains, without despair, without illusion. One of the most powerful metaphors in Buddhism for this process is the lotus flower. The lotus grows in the mud, rising through the murky water to blossom in radiant beauty above the surface. Without the mud, there would be no lotus. Without pain, there would be no awakening. The mud of suffering is not separate from the flower of liberation. It is its very foundation. To reject pain is to reject the possibility of growth. To embrace pain is to allow the lotus of wisdom and compassion to bloom in our lives. Another teaching that reveals pain as gateway is the concept of emptiness, sunyata. Pain often feels so solid, so absolute. But when we examine it with awareness, we see it is made of many conditions: the body, the mind, the past, the present, the stories we tell ourselves. None of these exist independently. Pain arises because of causes and conditions, and therefore it is empty of permanence and self. This emptiness is not nihilism, but liberation. It means that pain has no ultimate hold, no eternal existence. To see this is to find freedom in the very heart of suffering. Pain, instead of imprisoning us, points us toward the boundless space of emptiness, where harmony resides. Stories from Buddhist tradition abound with examples of pain as gateway. The Buddha himself sat through countless temptations and torments under the Bodhi tree before attaining enlightenment. His very awakening was born of sitting with suffering rather than fleeing it. Likewise, many great teachers endured hardship, illness, exile, or loss, and through these experiences, their wisdom deepened. Their lives remind us that the path is not to wait for pain to end, but to meet it fully, to learn from it, to let it guide us to truth. In modern life, we too can see this. A person who loses everything in a financial collapse may discover the emptiness of material attachment and awaken to a simpler, freer way of living. One who faces illness may realize the fragility of the body and deepen their compassion for others. One who grieves deeply may find themselves more attuned to the suffering of all beings, more open to love, more committed to living authentically. In each case, pain becomes not an obstacle but a doorway. This transformation does not happen quickly. It requires patience, practice, and courage. Mindfulness must be cultivated. Compassion must be nurtured. Wisdom must be practiced in daily life. But with each step, pain becomes less terrifying and more instructive. We begin to see that every wound is a crack where light can enter, that every sorrow is a call to awaken, that every loss is an invitation to love more deeply. Ultimately, the harmony that pain leads us to is not fragile happiness dependent on circumstances, but a deeper peace that nothing can shake. It is the peace of knowing that life is impermanent and that this impermanence is not a curse but a gift. It is the harmony of compassion, where the suffering of others is not a burden but a bond. It is the freedom of non-clinging, where pain comes and goes, but the heart remains vast and open. This is the light that every pain brings, not a denial of suffering, but its transformation into wisdom and love. As you reflect on your own journey, consider how the pains of your past have shaped you. Which wounds have humbled you, softened you, opened you? Which sorrows have made you wiser, more compassionate, more present? Even now, whatever pain you carry may hold within it the seed of liberation. Look into it with mindfulness. Let it teach you impermanence. Let it soften into compassion. Let it guide you into the path of release. And then you will see. Pain is not the end of harmony, but its beginning. And as we bring this reflection to a close, I invite you not only to hold these teachings in your heart, but to continue nourishing them through practice, community, and remembrance. Subscribe to the channel so that together we can keep exploring the light hidden in suffering, the wisdom born of wounds, and the harmony that arises when every pain becomes a gateway to liberation. The light beyond pain. We have walked together through a long and demanding path, one that has led us deep into the heart of suffering and back again into the radiance of wisdom. From the beginning, we accepted the premise that every pain brings a light, and through the 5 explorations, we have seen how this truth unfolds. Pain was revealed as a teacher that strips away illusions and awakens us to reality. It was seen as the soil from which compassion flowers, transforming isolation into connection. Through pain, we discovered the liberating truth of impermanence, that nothing binds us forever and no sorrow is eternal. We learned that mindfulness is the key to embracing pain without being destroyed by it, allowing us to observe rather than be consumed. Finally, we realized that pain itself, far from being an enemy, is a gateway to liberation and harmony, a threshold through which enlightenment itself can be reached. These are not abstract doctrines, but living truths. Every human life is touched by suffering, and therefore every life carries within it the potential for awakening. Your own struggles, your losses, your heartbreaks are not meaningless accidents, but opportunities for growth, compassion, and wisdom. Each time you suffer, you are standing at a doorway. You can choose to close it in bitterness, or you can walk through it into greater depth, love, and peace. Buddhism invites us to choose the latter, to see pain not as a curse, but as a guide. To live with this understanding is to live with courage. It is to stop fleeing from suffering and instead to face it with awareness and compassion. It is to embrace impermanence with gratitude, to hold the present moment tenderly because it is fleeting. It is to practice mindfulness so that every sorrow becomes a lesson, every fear becomes an opportunity, every wound becomes a place where light enters. And it is to trust that beneath every storm there is a stillness that nothing can shake, a harmony that cannot be taken away. The world today is filled with pain, personal, social, global. It is easy to despair, to feel crushed beneath the weight of suffering. But remember, every pain brings a light. The greater the darkness, the brighter the potential for compassion, for awakening, for transformation. If we meet our own suffering with mindfulness and love, we become lights for others. If we respond to the pain of the world with compassion, we become instruments of harmony. In this way, pain does not divide us, but unites us, reminding us of our shared humanity and our shared path toward liberation. And so, as we close, I invite you to carry this truth with you. Your pain is not meaningless. Your struggles are not wasted. Your wounds are not in vain. They are part of the great fabric of life, woven with threads of impermanence and compassion, pointing always toward awakening. Embrace them, learn from them, and allow them to open your heart. In doing so, you will discover the harmony that lies beyond suffering, the light that shines through every shadow, the liberation that has always been within reach. Stay connected to these teachings, to this path of reflection and awakening. Let each lesson accompany you, remind you, and encourage you as you walk through the trials of life. And if this journey has spoken to you, if these words have illuminated even a small corner of your own pain, I invite you to subscribe to the channel. Together, we will continue to explore the wisdom hidden in suffering, the compassion born of loss, and the harmony that awaits beyond every struggle. For truly, every pain brings a light, and that light is waiting for you.